there's something called linoleic acid, which sounds highly technical topic, but it's actually makes up about 6 to 10% of our modern diets, which could be causing an issue with our health. There are still unclear, roles of how it can either inhibit health or affect disease. But I think it's important to understand when something is this prevalent in the market, why and how can it be affecting us, and what can we do about this. Now, linoleic acid is an omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids. PUFAs, you'll hear them talked about. Jay Feldman and I have talked about this in the past. And this is something that does occur naturally in foods, especially in nuts, seeds, and seed oils. So, talking with Jay, I definitely want to sort of eat those in moderation, I would say, especially the ones that are high in PUFAs. Ones that are lower, macadamia nuts are one thing that stick out in my mind. Even hazelnuts, I believe, are a little bit lower on that spectrum. And so this linoleic acid, which is this polyunsaturated fatty acid, is also a significant source of calories that are found in processed foods. And so the question is, this should only be maybe 1 to 2% of our diet. Now, how come it's turned into 6 to 10% of our caloric intake? That could be an issue. Just to give you something to sort of compare it to, half-ounce serving of pecans, which is about 3 grams of linoleic acid. So really easy to get from the diet from a small amount. An ounce of raw cashews is about 2.2 grams of linoleic acid, which is about all you would need to prevent any type of deficiency in this amount. But like I said to you before, instead of having about 1 to 2% of your daily caloric intake from linoleic acid, it's become about 6 to 10%. And it's mainly because of the rise in vegetable oils, this consumption of soybean, sunflower, safflower, rapeseed, canola. It's doubled in the last 20 years and it's expected to grow 30% in the next 4 years. So you might be thinking, well, why is it so prevalent in foods and especially processed foods? Cheap, easy to put in products to help them last a little bit longer. They have no smell. You don't even know they're in there. You almost could think of them, and Dr. Chris Kenobi talked about this, as like somewhat of a silent killer because you can't even taste them. Usually if something is in a food that's not serving your health, you can taste it. It's either really good or it tastes horrible. But this has just become so prevalent in our society in mainly processed and boxed foods, but also in things like dressings and the feed that they're feeding animals with. So it's everywhere. And it's become a problem because omega-6 fatty acids, linoleic acid, is inherently unstable. And I talk about this with Brad Marshall coming up in the next week, and how, you want to be cooking in stable fats. When you have something that's fried, well, they used to fry back in the day. I believe most fast food companies like McDonald's and things would fry foods in like beef tallow, which is a stable fat. That's saturated fat. When you're frying something that's in an unstable fat like polyunsaturated fatty acids, omega-6s, this is when it breaks down and becomes rancid. Not becomes rancid, but essentially oxidizes and can cause issues in the body, in the cell membrane. So what happens is excess linoleic acid, which is what I think is happening in a lot of people, builds up in your cells over time. And it can stay up into your tissues for up to 2 years. So this can result in instability and inflammation at the cellular level. And this is what a lot of people from the bioenergetic viewpoint talk about, like Georgie Dinkoff talks about this. The late great Dr. Ray Peat would talk about sort of this cellular energy, and part of what's hurting our cellular energy is this buildup of linoleic acid from a lot of times from these seed oils. So you want to sort of keep an eye on this. This is not like the end all, but I think it's something that, if it's something that you've never thought of before, perhaps you should start thinking about like, well, what am I eating when I go out to dinner at these restaurants? I mean, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people wouldn't be requesting gluten-free, but now a lot of people are requesting gluten-free for many, gut-related issues and things like that. I think the next trend is going to be people going out to dinner and being like, because I do ask this from time to time, is can you cook my eggs in butter, not in any oils? And it might not be a bad thought to have, and it never hurts to ask, because I would say 99% of restaurants are using these seed oils to cook in and cook them at high heat. So avoid them as much as you can. What can you do? Salad dressings, mayonnaise, packaged foods, even these plant-based foods. A lot of them are laced with seed oils. Restaurants, like I mentioned to you before, just to give you an idea, let's say you get a a chicken Caesar salad with dressing, right? Well, 2 tablespoons of dressing of the Caesar dressing can contain up to 9 grams of linoleic acid, quite a bit. Let's say you get, I don't know, a hamburger, 2 tablespoons of condiments. The condiments itself can contain this high amount of linoleic acid as well. So a lot of time it's in the dressings and it's in the condiments that are being put on these foods. So eating out, just be, you don't have to be, it's not about being perfect. You're going to get linoleic acid as part of your diet in one way or the other. But if you can maybe, have them pan sear or grill without oils, I think that's a good place to start. And then, the nuts, seeds, and grains, I would just keep an eye on those. If you're coming home and you find that you're just like always snacking on nuts and seeds all the time, you have to think these are somewhat like hibernation foods and they can be high in linoleic acid. So, I love having nuts from time to time, but it's definitely not like a staple of an everyday thing. So you want to just sort of have it in moderation from that standpoint. And then when it comes to animal foods, I mean, your best bet is, local farms, getting your beef or meat or pork or chicken locally when they're eating the species appropriate diet would be ideal, like a grass-fed cow or a chicken that has eaten its species appropriate diet, not, so corn and soy free is something to keep an eye on. A little bit more difficult to get when it comes to chicken and pork. So if you're going to have conventional, go with conventional beef, because the way their digestive system works, even if they're grazing on corn and soy, they can break that down and it doesn't get in their tissue like it does for chicken and pork as much. So if you're going to do conventional, stick with beef. But yeah, I mean, as much as you can in your area, a species appropriate diet for these animals, if you could find foods like that. There's tons of new companies that are coming out and great ones. Force of Nature is a company that I order a lot of meat from. US Wellness Meats is a bigger shop, but they have a lot of great grass-fed items and species appropriate diet, chicken and things like that, and pork. I believe they have pork. And also, obviously wild fish as much as you can, just to try to avoid microplastics and things like that. Again, it's not about being perfect, just about being aware of these things and where is this food coming from? Where is it being sourced? That's the issue when you go out to dinner, because you don't necessarily know where they're getting their food from. For the most part, you don't. You can always ask, but they probably won't know. And that's what I want to touch on today is, this linoleic acid that at one point was just a small amount of our sort of diet as far as caloric intake. It has become more and more prevalent and continues to grow. And I think it's just something you want to keep an eye on. So that's all I want to touch on today. If you want my step-by-step blueprint on how to get your body back to what it once was 10 to 15 years ago without rearranging your life, click the first link below. If you enjoyed this content, YouTube thinks you'll like this next video.